certified public manager. Hello, everyone. I think it's afternoon everywhere but the Pacific time zone. I am Merrick Weaver, and you are joining us today thanks to a generous contribution from the Colorado Nurses Foundation for a quick workshop on rest, joy, and the Enneagram. It's great that you do not have to turn on your videos at all. I was hoping, is everybody, you can do thumbs up though. Can everybody hear me well? Okay, great. Yay. Oh my gosh, the little animated thumbs. We're all cartoon characters. Okay, so I am here zooming from my office in Southeast Denver, Colorado. And I am a fellow public health person. My background is in women's reproductive and perinatal health. I started my career here in Colorado in 2006 at Tri-County Health Department, where I met my husband. And I've been an executive director of a small community-based agency up in Commerce City. And since 2011, I've been doing coaching and strategic planning consulting and leadership development consulting. So this falls under the leadership development because rest is an important part of leadership. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen. Please feel free to use the chat for questions. Angie and I will both be monitoring them. All right, I'm in the slideshow, and then I'm going to share my screen. And I like to talk about it as I do it. Okay. Okay, there we are. Can you guys all see my screen now?
It's perfect, Merrick.
Wonderful. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so here's where we are. And yay. Rest, Joy, and the Enneagram. The longer title is How to Tap into Your Unique Temperament and Personality to Find Your Most Restful Rest and Most Joyful Joy. So this is a workshop. I want you guys to leave with some practical next steps. This is not theoretical. This is super, super practical. So if you like to take notes on your computer, you will be set up because you're on your computer. If you would like to grab a pen and some paper, if that's your preference, go ahead and do that now. There are some questions that you can drop in the chat, answers, and then there's some just reflections to do on your own. So this can be participatory if you want it to, but it can also be very, very individual. It's your all's comfort level. Okay, so in the chat right now, if you could just drop in your name, where you are in the world, and what kind of rest you are craving. Where is my chat? Oh, there we go. Now we're in the chat. Okay, great. Perfect. So in the chat, if you guys could drop, like I said, your name. Oh, Mary, Commerce City. That's where my husband and I met. Knitting and sitting. Stillness. Restful rest. Disconnection. Creative. Sleep. 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 Lots of sleep. Paige is down in Austin. Oh, I'm so glad that you can do this while you're recovering from surgery, and I hope you're doing all right. Yeah, rest without interruptions. Tropical beach, unfortunately, well, or fortunately, I'm not going to tell you you have to go on a long vacation to get rest. You can get rest right now. Thank you guys so much. And if you haven't, you can still drop your info in. Okay. So I always want to just start with a definition of mindfulness because I refer to mindfulness a lot. So when I talk about mindfulness, I am simply talking about paying attention, noticing something, discernment, using discernment to make decisions, but being thoughtful and intentional about decision making and putting space between you and the thing. So that is, there we go. That's a little better. That is how I define mindfulness. A lot of people talk about presence. For me, that's wonderful, but presence doesn't really mean anything to me. What means something to me is the idea that I'm actually paying attention to something that I've chosen to pay attention to, or noticing that thing. So I did want to start with that definition so that you know what I'm talking about. When I talk about mindfulness, I am not talking about a like intense meditation practice. Meditation is a different thing that involves some time. It really involves more time. Mindfulness you can do anywhere, anytime, in the car, while you're driving. In fact, it's better to drive and have a mindfulness practice, actually. It's much safer. Okay, moving to the next one. This is what we're going to be doing today. We are going to get clear on what joy means to you as an individual. Then we are going to understand the different types of rest. We're going to move on to understanding the 9 Enneagram types. If you are familiar with the Enneagram, that's wonderful. If you have never heard of it before, this is going to be a really, I think, thorough overview to get you intrigued. And then we are going to make sure there's time at the end to connect to your best rest so that you leave with an action plan for this afternoon, this weekend, the next month, whatever you want it to be. Okay, so we're going to start by getting clear with what joy means to you. And if you could answer this question to yourself, you're welcome to write this down if it's helpful. But I'd like for you to think about, what does it feel like when you are in an acute stress state? What does that feel like to you? Where do you feel it in your body? And one way that might be helpful in thinking about it is how you might describe it to somebody else. We're not actually going to talk about this at all, but I think it is important to think about what our stress state looks like and juxtapose it with what joy feels like, so that we can talk more about like really dialing into the kind of rest that you might need. And I'm going to give everybody like 90, maybe just a minute. Just a minute to answer that question. And then the next question that you can answer to yourself, or you can drop it in the chat if you feel comfortable, is how do you get yourself out of that stress state? Like in the moment when you're in that stress state, how do you get yourself out of it? If you came to the mindfulness Zoom webinar that we did a couple weeks ago, we talked a lot about this. So we're not going to go deep into it, but I did want you to, focus on breathing, where people feel it, spending time with loved ones. So your answer to this question about how you get yourself out of the stress state is unique to you. Taking a break, going outside, going on a walk, singing, going outside and breathing. So as we talk about the Enneagram and as we talk about the different kinds of rest, your answers to this are going to help you connect to these two concepts: getting lost in music, Yeah, there's like a huge diversity of answers. So the next few questions, just rapid fire popcorn. What brings you the most joy? Sort of what is joy to you? What does joy mean to you? And if you, there's a large truck outside my office just like beeping. Um, what is joy to you? And like, how would you describe the feeling of joy to someone else? Like your special feeling of joy? Oh, the tactile practices. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Joy feels warm, having an insight or idea or a spark. And what I want us to think about, because one of the things that like the Enneagram specifically has done for me is it's helped me remember that everyone is different. And so that's so simple, but I think it's super, super helpful in approaching any topic to remember that what brings us out of a stress state, what brings us joy, and what kind of rest we need are going to be really individual to us. So I'm going to give you guys a lot of information in the next 45 minutes. And it's just a very high level overview. Give yourself a break from the very beginning that you do not need to remember all of this. What you're trying to do, the objective here for you all in this next 45 minutes is to pull the pieces out that are important to you, the kind of rest that you need, and any insights into your personality or your way of viewing the world that are helpful to you. So don't go into this feeling like you need to know all of this stuff. Just focus on the little sparks and connections that you feel with certain information. Okay, the next question that you can answer to yourself, or you could drop in if you wanted to, is how much joy have you experienced in the past 24 hours? I'll tell you, it has not been a particularly joyful 24 hours for me. I'm not crying. My allergies are just like completely outrageous. Okay, so that is that. Now we're going to go into an overview of the different types of rest. And that is what we're going to do. It's going to be pretty high level. And just start letting the sparks connect with you. So the two women who have informed my understanding of rest more than anyone else are Dr. Sandra Dalton Smith. And she, if you Google types of rest, her stuff comes up over and over and over and over again because she is a physician by training. She's a medical doctor, and she has written a book about 7 different types of rest. She has divided them in a way that I really like. It makes a lot of sense to me. I've sort of grouped them as we go through. You'll see I've grouped them. The other teacher that has really rocked my world last year when I read Rest is Resistance is Trisha Hersey. She's been doing work around rest for years and years and years. She is the founder of the Nap Ministry. She's on social media. But I highly recommend following her, but this book is transformational. And the audiobook is wonderful. And so if you're interested in dismantling toxic systems of race and capitalism, this book is really, really wonderful. And it sort of makes rest like an imperative. So that is what I will say about the two women who have informed my understanding of rest more than anyone else. And Angie is dropping in links. So there's Trisha's website and Dr. Sandra's website. According to Dr. Sandra Dalton Smith, there are 7 types of rest: physical, mental, sensory, creative, emotional, social, and spiritual. So we're going to dive into these. So the first 2 that I see being really connected are physical rest and sensory rest. So there's 2 kinds of physical rest: the passive, which many of you all need, so take notes: sleeping, napping, laying down, even just having a 20-minute closing your eyes on the sofa. And then the active rest, which is stretching or massage, restorative yoga, where you're still soothing your nervous system, but it's a little more active. The question that I ask myself to know what kind of physical rest I need is, what does my body need right now? What is my body telling me that it needs right now? Sensory rest is similar in that it can be tactile. It's like tactile, and it involves the physical body. My guiding question for sensory rest is, how can I connect with my body right now? So do I need to unplug from tech? Do I need to do one of the 5 senses grounding practices? And for those of you in the mindfulness workshop, we did the physical, like, finger rubbing practice. So if you guys want to right now, I'll just review this one. You can sit with your feet on the floor or crisscross applesauce, roll your shoulders back and down, take a deep breath to bring yourself to the present moment. And then rub your thumb, or rub 2 fingers. I usually rub my thumb and my pointer finger together lightly enough and with enough pressure that you can feel the ridges on your fingertips. And then you can switch to all 5 fingers. And remember to keep breathing. And if your feet are planted on the floor, you can do this same practice with the soles of your feet, where you just sort of gently rock your feet around, feeling the soles of your feet in your shoes and on the ground. And then you can focus on each one of your toes. So the 5 senses grounding, that was the sense of touch, but you can do that with smell. When you drink your coffee or have tea, you can just take a moment to notice the smell of it. There's myriad options, and I know a lot of you guys are familiar with those techniques. Intentional sensory deprivation sounds so awesome. Like, I love intentional sensory deprivation. It sounds so intense, but it could just be like turning off your phone, keeping your phone in your purse when you're driving, or like in the glove box, turning off TVs, shutting the lights off when the sun goes down. Those, it doesn't have to be like, I've never done one of those like soaks, like where you're in a I think it's like a sensory float or something, where you're like in like room body temperature water, and then it's very, very quiet. But I'm interested to do that. It could be as simple as screen-free time. I will say everyone needs physical rest of some kind, more of it, right? We all need more physical rest, and we all need more sensory rest. Our senses are overloaded living in modern times. So the next 2 that connect for me, that feel like a category, is our mental rest and creative rest. So mental rest is another thing that every single one of us needs more of. I don't care who you are. Taking short breaks throughout the day that are intentional. Journaling can be a mental a mental rest, your mindfulness practices, whatever they are, can sort of take you out of all of the mental input, um, and bring you into the present moment. Meditation is another great way of resting mentally, although meditation can also not feel like mental rest. And so know yourself, right? Like meditation, especially if you're early in it, can involve a lot of exertion and it doesn't feel like rest at all. So my guiding question for this one is, what does my mind need right now? It's generally, I need less, right? I need a little less, or I might need some containers to put things in and compartmentalize. So creative rest is reawakening awe and wonder. And it could just be taking a break from a problem or project, which is kind of why I see mental rest and creative rest connected in a way. But the reawakening awe and wonder brings a different intentionality to this one. And so there are many guiding questions that you might ask yourself. These are just the ones I often ask myself. But what was my favorite way to play when I was a kid? What did I do for fun when I was little? And I got to do things for fun when I wanted to. And how can I bring more of that into my life? So the next two are more about the world around us. And you'll see if you're looking at the little green box of Dr. Dalton Smith's 7 types of rest, you'll see that I've grouped them a little bit differently. So social rest and emotional rest feel connected to me because they both have the potential of involving other people. So social rest is identifying where you get your energy. So if you if you identify as an introvert or an extrovert, that's helpful in knowing. But whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, spending time with people who support you and bring out the best in you, that is what social rest is. So it's the idea of, how am I going to be in community with people who fill up my bucket? And that's my question. That's one of my family's guiding questions, is who fills up my bucket when I'm with them? Who makes me feel good and content? And there's a children's book about filling up your bucket. And then emotional rest is really similar. And so sometimes these are conflated in my mind. Like, I don't necessarily see these as totally different, but emotional rest is really giving yourself space to be authentic in how you share your feelings. So with whom can you show up how you are and be accepted? It's not everyone, and it shouldn't be everyone. And the corollary to that is, I recently learned about energy vampires, and it's those people in your life that you walk away from feeling like depleted, or just not as good as you did going into the interaction. And so the guiding question that you can ask yourself, or that I ask myself, is, with whom am I my truest self? So if I'm really depleted, who are the people that I can just be my truest self and I don't have to exert any effort in the interaction? Or maybe not any effort, because I think all interactions involve some effort, but where is that effort? Like, there's just a little more ease. And so those are really big ones, especially if you are working on a team that's like highly interactive, even if you're still working remotely, or if you're in an office all day, or if your team is like very high stakes, if the work you're doing is like responding to emergencies and there's like a critical level of responsibility. But this is also important in your family of origin, in your neighborhood. So this is really, who are the people in our lives, and how are they supporting me, and how am I supporting them also? What is that reciprocity, and how does it feel like? Or what does it feel like? And then the last rest that we all need is spiritual rest. And this is taking time to feel that your life has meaning. It could be connecting, it's often connecting in nature, connecting with planet Earth and or the universe. And this spiritual rest may be based in a faith system, a faith belief system, or it may not be. If it is, that is wonderful. And if you don't have a faith belief system, you can think about the other ways that you connect with this idea that your life has meaning. So the question that I ask myself is, what supports me in feeling connected to something greater than myself? The easiest practice that I have is noticing the moon phases. That's the easiest one that has become the most just automatic for me. And it's something that I can do daily. But also just stepping outside and being connected with nature is an easy one that is generally pretty accessible. So now what I'm curious, now that we've gone over these 7 types of rest and sort of defined them, they're really connected with so many of the things that you guys dropped in the chat at the beginning. But which type of rest are you craving the most right now at 12:29 on or Mountain Time, Wednesday, October the 25th? We've got emotional, mental, sensory. Paige and I are both sensory and mental, mental, physical, sensory. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, the mental, sensory, physical is something I think we should all have a few tools that we can do every day. Because what I think is so powerful about making these connections and getting a toolkit so that you're like, oh man, if I need passive physical rest, these are the action steps that I have to do to get more sleep or to take a nap. I have to do X, Y, and Z. If I need sensory rest, here are 5 ways that I could do that just for a minute, just for 1 minute. It's unbelievable how little tiny bits of time can make a huge, huge difference. No one is too busy to incorporate this in your day. No one is too busy. There is no reason why you couldn't practice some of these every single day. Oh, it just says Zoom user. I'm not sure who the Zoom user is, but someone did a float on Pearl Street once and it was overwhelming. I wonder if it would be overwhelming for me also. It feels like a very long time to be in a very dark, wet room. Okay, so you guys answered that question. So let's move on to understanding the 9 Enneagram types. This next section might overwhelm you to the point that you need some mental rest. So if you are not familiar with the Enneagram, give yourself permission to just have a slightly better understanding of it. Hi, Christian. Don't feel like you have to remember everything. I think the types of rest are very intuitive. The Enneagram is a little less. And so that is my disclaimer. Give yourself permission if this is the first time you're learning about the Enneagram to just like kind of get a sense of what it is. If you are interested in knowing more about the Enneagram, my favorite resource online is the Enneagram Institute, which Angie just dropped into the chat. They have a bunch of free resources. You can just like read about all the types. You can get so much information. And then they have a $12 test that will help you self-type. A test or quiz can never type you. You have to type yourself, but sometimes doing a quiz online can be helpful in getting started somewhere, because otherwise you're like, ooh, this is a lot. but don't end with the test. You kind of start your journey with the test, is what I'll say. So you can click on that link and explore them while we go through this. So the Enneagram, for me, is just a way of remembering that everybody has a different motivation in their life, and that I cannot know what that motivation is, period. So that is how simple it is for me. There's a really interesting history that we're not going to go into today about like where it came from and questions and mystery around it. But the point is, it is just a way of remembering that everybody has a different motivation and that I can't know what that motivation is. I might see behaviors, but a lot of our behavior, we act the same way. I mean, a lot of humans act the same way, but you can't know why somebody else is acting or behaving the way that they're behaving. It also helps me remember that solutions to any problem are going to be really connected to that person's motivation. And so in that way, it kind of like transformed the golden rule, like treat everyone as you would like to be treated, to treat everyone as they want to be treated. Because the way I want to be treated super stresses out a lot of people. So we're going to go through the 9 types. You'll see that the 9, the peacemaker, is on the top. And that is because they can see 2 sides to every single story. Any situation, the peacemaker is like, I get you. I also get you. Peacemakers are not going to want to be the people who make the decision about where to go out to dinner. They don't want to make the choice. They'll be happy with whatever anyone decides. So the peacemaker sits at the top of the Enneagram as a reminder of this, like their ability to see all sides. Oh, what else was I going to say about that right now? I think that is enough. Before we go into the individual types, does anybody need to drop a question in the chat? I will also say about the Enneagram that's helpful for me to remember is that it feels more dynamic to me than like Myers-Briggs. It is less, I don't know, like black and white. Like emergenetic sometimes feels, well, maybe that's not how I want to say it. Some of the personality typing systems feel a little more, they're like, they've narrowed into a part of us that's a little more like a niche. And the Enneagram feels more expansive. It feels like it captures more of me and also of other people. And it is, for me, it's the best personality typing system as a tool for compassion, both self-compassion and compassion for others. So that's why I like it. Oh, the Enneagram has changed your life. Yeah, it can be really life-changing. And it can totally change the way you work with your staff. I would add, Christian, that it's changed the way I interact with my family of origin, my husband. Lucia asked if a person's Enneagram type can change over the course of their life. That's a great question. And this is actually the thing I wanted to say. We are all made up of all aspects, right? When you dive into the Enneagram, it's really just like describing the human condition. But we generally have a strong, like one of these is kind of our strong way of showing up in the world. The purpose of the Enneagram is to understand that and bring them all back into balance. The purpose of the Enneagram is not to like figure out your number and then be like, oh, well, I'm a 7. So like, like seven's got a 7. Like that's not the point of the Enneagram at all. The point is that you understand yourself and then you bring yourself into better balance. And generally the people that I follow, like Ian Morgan Cron, Suzanne Stabile, those are my 2 I love. And then the Enneagram Institute information, it doesn't change, but it might have felt like a bigger part of you in your 20s. than it does as you get older, because most of us start doing like some kind of professional development or personal growth work, right? Like even without knowing, I knew what a lot of my weaknesses were, and I've been trying over the last 25 years to bring them into better balance. So it may be more muted and you may be more balanced, but it, from what all the people that I love as teachers purport, that it doesn't change.
Merrick, this is Angie. Can I jump in here for just a second?
Please do.
And I just want to jump in because I haven't heard you say this before. And I think it's really important for people to understand because I am, and this does not surprise you, Merrick, a number 2. I am a helper. But over the past couple years, I've done a lot of therapy and really looking at like that piece of me and how it is more of a trauma response than it is how I really want to show up. And so have like tried to not be as much of a helper. It's very hard for me not to be. And so I'm looking forward to retaking this quiz. I haven't taken it in a while. And just after this sort of realization, hoping maybe that it won't show up as so much of a number 2. I won't show up as so much of a number 2.
Yeah, I think I'm so glad that you said that too, because when you, and this actually connects with the comment in the chat. So sometimes when you take a quiz, you'll be like a very high number 2 and a very high number 4 and a very high number 6 or something. All that means is that your dominant type is likely one of those that rose to the top. It does not mean, for example, that you're a 4 with a 2. So Christian, I hate to destroy your worldview right now. If 4 is your main type, the only options for your wings are 3 or 5. And so we're not going to go into wings today. But whatever your type is, this is like, I am a 7. So I identify as a 7. I either have a 6 wing or an 8 wing. Those are the only 2 options. So, and the book, The Wisdom of the Enneagram, is a great book, The Wisdom of the Enneagram. I don't have a link for it. It has a short description of every single type and their wing. And you can oftentimes just read like 4 with a 3 wing or 4 with a 5 wing, and one of them will resonate with you more clearly. So go forth and learn more about yourselves. All right, it's 12:40 and I want to see how quickly I can go through the 9 types without blowing your mind. All right, we're going to start with the 8, the challenger, because they are challengers. And if you don't know you're a challenger, you really are going to challenge everything about the system. So we just start with the challengers so that you guys know that you know who you are and that you can see that everybody else is not like you. So my challengers, my number 8s. Challengers are motivated by a need to be strong and avoid feeling weak or vulnerable. They really want to be self-reliant. They want to prove their strength, reduce weakness, or resist appearing to be weak. They want to be important in their world, dominate the environment, and stay in control of a situation. So like some of the other types, they have a strong need for control, but their control is about showing how strong they are. So I connected these sort of different kinds of rest with the types, but for a challenger to really sort of like take a breath of relief, they need social rest and they often need creative rest. And the social and the emotional rest is sort of like that rest of not having to prove themselves so hard. And then I want you guys to appreciate how amazing all the images are and how they completely connect to each type. So the Dodge Challenger, obviously, the Ram. I mean, you think about a Ram, like they're butting heads, and challengers are often butting heads with the people around them. A Spider, obviously, it's a little scary. Sometimes challengers can feel a little scary. And then octopuses are just kind of like highly intelligent and like mysterious. And I think challengers can be too, because there's like this whole soft part of them. And we just often, they're just very misunderstood. So, and also octopuses have 8 legs and spiders have 8 legs. And so as you can see, I gave a lot of thought to the images. So just appreciate them as we go on. I was raised by a challenger. My dad is a challenger, and it's really wonderful to be raised by one because he encouraged me to stand up for myself and to have a voice. Thanks, Angie. I love these images too. Okay. The peacemaker. Peacemakers are motivated by a need to keep the peace and to merge with others and to avoid conflict. They want to create harmony in their environment. They want to avoid conflicts and tension, to preserve things as they are, and to resist anything that would upset or disturb them. So they are the bridge builders. They will build bridges, metaphorically. They are always the people that you want to go to for a sense of peace. I have surrounded myself with a lot of peacemakers. It's really lovely. They provide a really wonderful cocoon, like from the world. And then I just feel like everyone's face in the Brady Bunch picture is so peaceful. Okay, that is the peacemaker. The reformer. I misidentified myself as a reformer for many years. So reformers are motivated by a desire to live the right way, to improve the world, and to avoid fault and blame. The type of rest that they often need is really time away, creative and spiritual rest. Some systems, like some resources, will call the reformer the perfectionist. But I like calling it the reformer better. They really want to be right. So like the challenger, they really want to be right, but it's for a totally different motivation. They want to avoid fault and blame. The challenger wants to avoid looking weak. And so you really got to get in touch with your motivations to understand your type. Reformers strive higher. They want to improve everything. They are the most consistent with their ideals. And they really always want to be above criticism so that they can't be condemned by anyone. So reformers have a really, really, really loud inner critic. And part of their spiritual work is to work on self-compassion. They are the ones who are going to phone bank. Your reformers are the first ones to phone bank for an election. They will sound the alert. I think you can see where I'm going with my images here. Okay, the helper. Angie already talked about her dominant type is the helper. They are motivated by a need to be loved, to express their feelings for others, to be needed and appreciated. The rest that they need is permission not to be helpful. So if you know someone who self-identifies as a 2, just literally telling them that they don't have to be helpful is the best. And so what the type of rest that they often need is emotional and social. They need the rest of just being with people where they don't have to be a helper all the time. And like I said earlier, and I just want to say again, that we all need mental, sensory, and like I could put mental, physical, and sensory on every single type, because we all need that. So helpers really want to be loved. They want to express their feelings for others. They really want to be needed and appreciated. And they want to get others to respond to them and to vindicate their claims about themselves. So they really want to be recognized for being helpers also. The achiever, and Pam, if you would mute yourself, please, that would be awesome. The achiever is the number 3. They are motivated by a need to be or to appear to be successful and avoid failure. They want to be affirmed, to distinguish themselves from others, to have attention, to be admired, and to impress others. And the United States is a very achievement-oriented culture. So achievers are often validated in the United States, and none of this is viewed as anything that they would need to be different. I mean, they would not need to change anything. Like, of course, they are strivers, and we live in a place that rewards striving. And so achievers feel very comfortable in the US. The type of rest that they need is being unproductive. So that creative and spiritual rest is what's super important for them. And moving on to, we've got 4, 5, 6, and 7 left. 3 more. No, 4, 5, 6, 7, 4 more. So the individualist is the 4. In some systems, it's called the romantic. I like them both. They are motivated by a need to be understood, to experience their really big feelings, and to avoid being ordinary. The worst thing that could happen to a 4 is if you told them that they were just like everybody else. The 4s are the least, there's the fewest number of 4s. They're the least, there's the fewest number of 4s. And they want to express themselves in their individuality, to create and surround themselves with beauty, to maintain certain moods and feelings. And they're not always like joyful moods and feelings. They're very invested in maintaining their moods. They will withdraw to protect their self-image, and they are really good at taking care of their emotional needs before attending to anything else, which for a lot of the other types doesn't make any sense at all. And so spiritual and social rest is often the kind of rest that they need. They really need to get out of their heads. So whatever that looks like for a 4 is what it looks like. Number 5 is the investigator. They are motivated by a need to gain knowledge, to conserve energy, and avoid relying on others. They often go deep into a problem. They want to possess knowledge. They want to understand their environment. Sometimes they're called the observers, and they want to have everything figured out as a way of defending themselves from threats from the environment. So they're gathering knowledge and information to protect themselves from threats. And they really need alone time to recharge. So I read recently or heard recently that 5s they wake up every day with a set amount of energy. So the rest, I think the rest and 5s, if anybody self-identifies as a 5, this is really interesting because investigators wake up with a certain amount of energy for being in the world. And when that energy is spent, they're done. So these are the people at the party who like all of a sudden are just gone. Even if they're hosting it, they might just like at the end of the night retire to their beds. They are really good at protecting that energy so that they can make it through a whole day. So if that connects with you, you might be a 5. The loyalist is number 6. Loyalists are motivated by fear and the need for safety and security. Loyalists want to have security. They want to feel supported by others. They want to have a lot of certitude and reassurance. They do a lot of testing of attitudes of others around them, which we call norming. They're like the people who are most likely to like norm. Like, what do you think about this? Like they'll poll their people. And ultimately they're fighting against anxiety and insecurity. So 6s want things that make them feel secure. We have a couple of 6s in our lives that we're very close to. And I've taught my kids that when they call their aunts, that their job is to say, hey, it's me, everything's okay. And just from the very beginning of the conversation, let them know that nothing's wrong. Because 6s often, like when the phone rings, they just immediately think, oh, something's wrong. And that was really transformational. That knowing that like they're kind of always waiting for the other shoe to drop is helpful because, well, their type of rest is a break from that responsibility. So it could be creative play, it might be spiritual, but it's just knowing that they don't have to like hold everything together. And so it was really helpful for me to understand that 6, because I, like I said, am a 7, the enthusiast, and we are motivated by a need to be happy, to plan stimulating activities, and avoid pain at all costs. we need stillness. We need to be able to sit with the emotions that we deem negative. And because we want to maintain our freedom and happiness so much, freedom is super important to a 7. We don't want to miss out on worthwhile experiences. We kind of want to like taste everything. We want to stay excited and occupied in order to avoid and discharge pain. So 7s, along with 4s, are the most likely to battle addiction because addiction is just numbing and avoiding pain. And so I would, if the phone rings, I will never think something's wrong. So it was really helpful to understand that these people that I love so much are actually motivated by a fear of losing their security or something terrible happening. And I'm just like hoping that someone's calling me, inviting me to go on a beach vacation. Whoever wants the beach vacation, I'm in. And all of the photos I pulled from Unsplash, and they were all free images. And so when I used multiple images from a photographer, I linked to it in the slides, and I can share my slides in the chat when we're done. So that was the quickest Enneagram overview ever. Does anybody have any questions on the types before we connect to our best rest? And so I'm going to put this slide up right here that has the 7 types of rest and the 9 different Enneagram types. I want to just remind everyone that it can take a really long time to type yourself. I thought I was a 1 for many years. Then I thought I was a 3 for a couple of years before I discovered that I was a 7. Generally, if you think you're a type and it feels great, you might want to keep looking for a different type. You may not have actually found your type, because sometimes when we find our type and we start digging into the recommendations for personal growth, they can feel really, really difficult. Oh, thanks, Jill. Thank you. I know it's a lot of information, and I will say there's like unbelievable resources out there. There's podcasts, there's articles online, there's books that were written 50 years ago. Like there's just decades of great information about the Enneagram. Lauren, so yes, the best way to find out what type you are, I would start by taking the Enneagram Institutes, which Angie dropped in the chat. I love the Enneagram Institutes. It's a $12 test. You have to pay for it, but it's $12, and I am not affiliated with the company. I think it's really good. A lot of the tests that are out there, though, there's so many free ones, which is fine, but they often measure, this is where the public health behavior change. This is good. I'm making a tie-in here for us. They measure behavior, not motivation. And so some of the tests just like aren't well designed. They're just not designed to measure what they say they're measuring. So I think the Enneagram Institute's test, it like takes 45 minutes. It's pretty thorough. And I think it does a better job of evaluating your motivation as opposed to just your behaviors. Lauren, I think starting with a test is great, especially the Enneagram Institute's test. And then you'll get a report with some recommendations, and then that will give you the roadmap to start. Okay, it said like maybe I'm a 3 or an 8, like my top ones were 3 and 8, and I scored really closely. I'm going to start diving into that and seeing what resonates with me. Another way to do it is just to read any book from, any book that's out there. Ian Morgan Cron. I'll just type his name in is a great author. Suzanne Stabile. They've actually co-written a couple books. They are both based in Christian faiths, but the information is really accessible. I'm not a Christian, but I love all of their information. And is there a way to find tests you've taken in the past, Kristen? I don't know that actually. So in the last 3 minutes, feel free to keep asking any questions that you have. You can unmute yourself and ask, or you can type them in the chat. But I do want you guys to make a rest plan for yourself for this afternoon, and then a longer period of time, like maybe this weekend or the next month. So what is one way, with a little information about the different personalities and a lot of information about the 7 types of rest, what is a practice that you could literally do between now and when you go to bed that would help you get the rest you need? And write it down for yourself in your planner, on your calendar, on your hand, whatever system you use. And please drop those ideas in the chat because we can inspire each other. What could you do on your drive home? And then the other question to think about is then how could you evolve that practice into a practice over the weekend? Oh, the slides. Yes. I'm going to stop the share and I'm going to give you guys the link to this. And please drop, let's see, anyone with a link is a viewer. Okay, guys, here are the slides. Oh, and then the last thing is, if you want to talk more about this, or if you want to be connected with me, I'm going to drop in the chat. This is my newsletter that you can sign up for. And then this is my email address. But definitely sign up for my newsletter because I'll be doing more of workshops like these. And then we're going to be doing a really awesome November thing around getting ready for the holidays, which is like a mindfulness practice and a rest practice all together, even though it's very counterintuitive. People are always like, I don't want to plan for the holidays in November, but your December self will thank you. So we've got sensory rest, taking a break from the screen and taking a nap, sleeping at last podcast, a bath with, and not bringing your phone. Every single person today, if you have anywhere to drive to, put your phone away. Make sure your phone is out of sight, out of mind while you're in the car. Going for a run outside. Oh, mild COVID. I mean, getting some alone time in the basement is not the worst silver lining. What I want to leave you guys with right here at 1, as we need to close out, is that even acknowledging that these practices are rest practices can allow you to feel more rested by giving yourself credit and being like, oh, look, I just got some mental rest, or, oh, I just got the sensory rest that I really needed. It's not always sleep that we actually need. I mean, a lot of times it is actually sleep. But there's lots of other rest that we need. So when was the last time you connected with a feeling that you are part of something bigger than yourself? And maybe that's just by being with a dog or a cat or a horse, like, or noticing I could go on and on. I'm going to stop. Long bike rides. And Angie just said, if you would like us to send you a link to the recording, please share your email privately if you desire. And then you can check CPHA's website next week for the link. This is the first time I've done this workshop, so I would also love, just if you're like, that was way too much information, it might be better like for an hour and a half so that we could have a little more discussion time.
Oh, I feel like it went I think it was really good. It's a lot of information, but it was really fun. And because we didn't have enough money to do any kind of evaluation for your webinars, Merrick, but maybe we'll add that next year when we have you do this again.
Awesome. Yeah, I think more time would be nice, but also if you join my newsletter, which I can like drop the link back up if I can find it. This is, like I said, this is the first time I've done this one. I've thought a lot about mindfulness. I've thought a lot about rest, and I've thought a lot about the Enneagram, but I haven't connected them yet. And they just feel very connected to me. But a friend of mine, Lisa Vratney Smith, and I are also talking about how to do a little more work and teaching around Rest is Resistance by Tricia Hersey. If you haven't read it, it is incredible. And as white women, we want to create some spaces where we can talk about what it means for white people. So that'll be coming too. Bye, Andrea. Bye, everyone. It's
Thank
three
you, Mary.
past.
That was awesome. So much fun. And I think for public health professionals, kind of a new topic, or at least for many of us. So,
Right? I should write down the connection though between like the questionnaires being poorly designed in the Enneagram world. There's a real opportunity there.
yeah, for sure. All right, I'm going to stop the recording.